So this is the as-is contract, but most of the provisions that we're going to talk about today are the same. And I'm starting with title evidence and insurance. At least if left blank 15 days prior to closing, or if paragraph 8A, which is a cash offer, is checked, then 5 days prior to closing. That is the title evidence deadline. A commitment should be provided to the buyer. And after closing, an owner's policy of title insurance shall be obtained and delivered to buyer. If seller has an owner's policy, and this is something that's really important, but most people don't appreciate. If seller has an owner's title policy of insurance covering the real property, a copy shall be furnished to buyer and closing agent within 5 days after the effective date. One of the important things about this is if the buyer has owned the home for less than the seller has owned the home for less than 3 years, they get a reissue credit. It saves them money on the title policy. So that's really important. And then at the very bottom of this paragraph, it discusses municipal lien search. I think I went over that in the first class, but I'm going to talk about it again because I think it's very important. In 2017, they added a definition of municipal lien search to the contract, and it reads, for purposes of this contract, municipal lien search means a search of records necessary for the owner's policy of title insurance to be issued without exceptions for unrecorded liens imposed pursuant to chapters 159 or 170s in favor of any governmental body, authority, or agency. When I first read it, I had no idea what it meant. I read those 2 chapters of the Florida statutes multiple times, and I couldn't figure out what it meant. But I was reading the statutes for what was in them, not what was left out of them. When we first started doing municipal lien searches in 2013, there was no definition. So as an industry, we defined it as a search of open building permits, unrecorded code violations, and unpaid utility bills. Open building permits and unrecorded code violations are not included in those 2 statutes. So what the committee did is crafted language to write out of the contract a search of open building permits and unrecorded code violations. We are governed by the 4 corners of this contract. We cannot go outside the lines of the contract. So we were troubled by this at the Florida Agency Network. And as a result, we decided that we would send the buyer's agent 1 email. We don't follow it up with a phone call. We don't follow it up with a second email. And ask if the buyer would like to have those searches performed. Again, those searches I refer to open or expired building permits and unrecorded code violations. If so, we will provide that search at no additional cost or fee. However, if hard costs are incurred, obtaining that information from the governmental entity, then we will pass that along to the buyer. Most of our agents, buyer's agents, don't respond to that email. They don't understand it. I'm hopeful that everyone on this call will now understand that email. In fact, I received a call about a year ago from an agent in Seminole who was fired up. Her buyer, who was then a seller, had $5,000 in code liens against her house, and the city of Seminole would not negotiate. She wanted to sue the title company. I said, okay, hold the phone. I went to the closer. The closer sent me a copy of the email that we had sent to the agent asking if they wanted to search. We had a read receipt. The agent didn't respond. When I asked her why, she said she didn't know what the email meant. Unrecorded code violations had always been a part of the lien search. And she was right up until April of 2017. Keep in mind that there is no separate contingency upon which a buyer can rely to terminate the contract in the event they get a bad municipal lien search, other than the inspection contingency. So if the inspection contingency expires and subsequent to that, the buyer gets a bad municipal lien search, the buyer's stuck in the contract. So we're going to give you some language, and I think, Chris, you obtained this language that's going to read that this contract shall remain contingent until such time as the buyer has received the municipal lien search and has had an additional 5 days to object to the same. Excuse me.
And I'll, as you know, Jim had to just step away for a second. That verbiage is in the, I did send that on that first contracts class. I'll make sure on the follow-up after this class, I'll resend that verbiage just for the few people that are not on it so that everybody sees it as well. So, and we did have one question, Jim. I'll just, you know, when it relates to the lien search, the cost is going to kind of depend on the county. So if you're wondering how much is it going to be, if we do, you know, if you do want to have a lien search completed, it is dependent on each county. That's why it's, you know, it's, let's say it's a ballpark of around $125. But again, if you're in Pinellas County, that might be a little bit more. If you're in another county, it might be a little less. And sometimes
actually,
it does come down to the hard cost.
Chris, if I can interject, Pinellas County and Hillsborough County actually don't charge any extra for the expanded search. Not a dime. Polk has a charge. I don't remember what it is, but it's, in my opinion, it's certainly worth it. I think it's 50, it's less than $100. I see Virginia's on, she might know.
Yeah, and that's why each county is a little bit different. Yeah. That's why we don't, you know, it's just, Miami Beth did confirm it's,
Miami-Dade is outrageous. I mean, it's hundreds of dollars. So it does vary. But in addition to that language, I like to use some language to expand the search right off the bat. And I include this language in paragraph 20. In addition to the municipal lien search set forth in paragraph 9C of this contract, the municipal lien search shall include a search of open or expired building permits and unrecorded code violations. So now my contract remains contingent and I'm getting the expanded search. I'm sorry I'm laughing because I can literally hear my dog snoring from across the room.
Hey, Jim, before we jump to the next, we do have one question that kind of popped up. Why not do lien search as default instead of ask every time? Why do we not do that?
Because we are confined by the four corners of the contract. So if the buyer doesn't ask for the expanded search, we can't do the expanded search. That's why. Because the committee wrote those two elements of the search out of the contract. So we can't give Hopefully it to you even if we want to.
Perfect. And the person that asked the question, they said thank you. So that helps clarify. So thanks, Jim.
No problem. Why did the committee do this? I don't know. I wasn't at the meeting. I've heard several stories. The first story I heard was from the vice chairman of the committee, Jamie Marks, a lawyer down in Miami, said that they had focused most of the time, and keep in mind, this committee does a really good job. They do it on their own time. They're not compensated. It's made up of 11 realtors and 11 lawyers. They spend their own money to travel to get to the meeting, their own money for accommodations. And they had spent most of their time rewriting the financing contingency, which quite honestly was a train wreck from 2013 to 2017. The story that Jamie told me is that at the end of the day, they were getting ready to leave, and the realtors in the room said, wait, this lien search is causing us problems. And in fairness to those realtors, I get it. It was causing them problems because they would end up with open building permits, and the permit wasn't pulled by their seller. It wasn't even pulled by their seller's seller. It was pulled by their seller's seller's seller. That's a mess. But we're going to go over language in the contract shortly that addresses who has to pay for those open permits. So they, and I'm sure that it was the lawyers in the room that came up with this language that artfully wrote those elements of the search out of the search. Because it's very confusing. Nobody knows what that means. And it took me about a week to figure out what they were trying to do. Pick one, either seller shall pick and pay or buyer shall pick and pay. In our area, of course, we are typically seller pick, seller pay. A lot of people think it's the law. It is not the law. It's a negotiated term of the contract, just like any other term of the contract. And I'm turning on to page 4, Chris. All right, thank you. Miami-Dade, Broward regional provision. My suggestion to you is stay out of Miami-Dade, Broward County. The survey. On or before title evidence deadline, the buyer at buyer's expense may obtain a survey. If seller has a survey covering the real property, a copy shall be furnished to buyer and closing agent within 5 days of the effective date. It just that and the prior policy just help us out. It helps make everybody's job a little easier. Okay, so I encourage people to get a survey, even if they're paying cash for the property and they aren't required to get a survey because they aren't required to get a Form 9. And a Form 9 is an endorsement to the title policy required by the lender. You know, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for a piece of property. Don't you want to know if there are encroachments? Also, with regard to the survey, if any realtor chooses to order their own survey, make sure that you provide a copy of the title commitment to the surveyor. The surveyor will not ask for the title commitment, and if you don't give it to the surveyor, he's not going to depict any recorded easements on the survey. So you've kind of wasted your money. Home warranty, you know, it is what it is. I had one for a while. I gave it up. They repaired my air conditioner 500 times. What I really needed was a new air conditioner. Does the title company give the survey to the surveyor if I provide? Yeah, sure, we'll give it to the surveyor.
Hey, Jim, there was,
go ahead.
if I can jump in, there is one, and I don't know if you kind of covered this. I'm just looking through. There were a couple of questions that kind of popped up. One question was, is there a reason we're looking at the contract from the 417 revision versus the 619 contract?
Yeah, the 619 contract didn't really make any significant changes for us. It added some language regarding taxing districts, and we don't have taxing districts. So the changes to the 419 contract really didn't affect us. And most of the time in use in our market, I'm seeing this contract. Again, we don't, again, it goes back to Miami-Dade. They have these special taxing districts down there that we don't have.
Thanks, Jim. And another follow-up question that was sent to me, is there anything that they need to be aware of with the survey if, let's say, the seller has a copy of their prior survey, and let's say they want to use this because the buyer wants to save money? What is your, I mean, I know that there's guidelines and I know we have flyers on it, but what is your maybe number one takeaway on that? Like why you shouldn't do that, and accept a seller survey that they've had for years?
I guess to the extent that that prior survey is not certified to you as the buyer, so you have no privity with the survey company if there's a problem. And believe it or not, there can be errors in surveys. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we had done a closing in 2017. A particular survey company who we will never use again performed the survey. We later found out that they don't go to the site. It's strictly a GPS survey. And they missed a 22-foot encroachment of a driveway onto the subject property. It wasn't shown on the survey. And, we don't know that. We don't go to the property. We're just a title company. We rely on the surveyor. And if the lady had just used the seller's prior survey, she would not be in privity with the title company. With the survey company. She would have no cause of action against them for their error. So for a couple, whatever it costs, $300, $250, typical residential survey, I think it's worth it.